Let me see.
Uh-huh.
I guess maybe we can.
So just started. So first thing first, thanks and welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to see you at today's special session of the Ukrainian PMI Chapter's book club. Regularly, we explore influential books on project management, leadership, and organizational excellence. But today is truly special because we have a privilege of welcoming the authors themselves, Karen Martin and Mike Osterling, the brilliant minds behind value stream mapping book, How to Visualize Work and Align Leadership for Organizational Transformation. So far, we've focused on these books well and practical applications. But today, we have a unique opportunity to hear directly from its creators. Karen Martin is a globally recognized expert and award-winning author whose work in lean management and organizational excellence has helped companies worldwide streamline operations and drive meaningful change. And Mike Osterling is a highly respected lean consultant and coach, known for his hands-on approach to improving processes and fostering sustainable transformations across industries. So the format of today's session is that we have a little bit less than an hour for now. A session is being recorded, and we have a set of pre-prepared questions to start the discussion, but we're also open to audience questions from the chat. So we'll be selecting and reading them throughout. And at the end of today, we will have Ask the Author Anything session, which will not be recorded, and that it will be a special opportunity to broaden the horizon of what you actually want to ask. And we are very grateful to have Karen and Mike today. And yeah, so let's give them a warm welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So I also would like to give a floor for a minute or two to you, because maybe I have to add something, or you can bring something to the table a little bit more than I just started.
Karen, you want to go?
Sure. Well, so first of all, we are honored to be here. Anytime someone reads a book that an author writes, we're like, thank you. You never know when you write a book whether people are going to take to it or not. And what's been so surprising and so lovely for Mike and I is that we weren't squarely thinking about the tech industry when we wrote the book. And yet the bulk of our sales now are from tech. And so it's really been a surprise and a really pleasant one. And it has opened up our doors to understanding a lot more about how technology can enable value being delivered and what are the common problems that get in the way that are tech related and things like that. So that's been a really nice thing. And I have two passions in this big world of business performance improvement. I like it all. I love it all, in fact. But the two top passions I have are value stream thinking and transformation and strategy deployment. And organizations struggle mightily at both, and they're so powerful when you get it. So thank you, everyone, and Mike, your turn.
Yeah, just real quick, I just want to say that thank you for having us. It is very it's gratifying. Hopefully not in an egotistical way, but in a service way. I think back and reflect back on all of the things that I learned and the resources that I tapped into as I was going to say in the early phases of my journey, but it's been throughout my journey. And I've been, I cracked my, right. I first started studying lean as a system and such back in the mid late 90s. And so early days, the resources out there were invaluable. So it's Karen and I were reflecting yesterday. We actually published the book. We released it in late 2013, early 2014. So it's been a dozen years. And like Karen said, the tech community has been the community that we're aware of that has really given the book the legs that it continues to have. So it's kind of cool that even though it's neat to see how people have been able to adapt the thinking into such a wide variety of environments. So good to have you all here and thank you.
Let's make it live. Mark, you have a raised hand. Do you want to add anything?
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm sure I could look this up, but maybe you could share the name of the book.
Oh,
Save me some
here we go.
keystroke.
Value stream mapping.
Well, that's easy enough. Thank you.
Value stream transformation. And McGraw-Hill said, no, we need a better SEO word. So we have to use value stream mapping so we can get sales. So yeah, thank you.
Sure, it's also into the chat. We also can potentially do some kind of group photo, aka screenshot with the books and everything.
Yeah.
I'm just guilty. I bought it in Audible, so I was just
I'll
right.
hold it for you. I'll get another one.
I will do like just that, and then we'll Photoshop everything.
You can do this for value stream and peace.
Yeah.
Cool. So just for understanding the audience a little bit more, because usually we have a little bit smaller group of people, I can ask what do you actually know about the value stream mapping? Let me find this small, teeny tiny ball. So please answer it. It's only the one question here.
So you just click on it if you, yeah, I see. Okay. I've never done a Zoom poll before. This is fun. I've done other polls, but this is much more elegant, built right into the platform.
And then it's cool because Anton can share the results with all of us.
Yeah.
Now 3 more people have to vote. I believe that's we are.
I didn't vote.
All right, I'll vote.
All right then.
It won't let me vote. I'm a host. I think
Good.
hosts aren't allowed.
Well, it should like the one dude who skipped. That's no, actually, just one more. You're right. It's not allowing to vote for host and co-host. So 91% is of group is participated. So let's see the results. Share results. So
It's a bimodal curve.
It is.
Got half of the folks are kind of never heard of it or very limited experience, and the other half of the folks have facilitated either one or multiple value stream maps. So,
Cool.
so that means all questions are open. So whether you're kind of a rookie type question, that's okay, or if you're advanced questions, that's fair game as well.
Yeah.
there are no bad
You,
questions.
Anton. That's good.
Let's start
Did you
from.
share did you share them? Did you share the results? Is it still let
Yeah,
me
sure then,
I
but
just hit
Do you see them?
Yes, we can
I
see
just
them.
shared it. Yeah.
okay, I will also screen a shot of them for later on, and now stop sharing.
Cool.
Good. So let me start. Let me start from the first question. It's actually from Aliona. She wasn't able to join now because she's actually like making some lean trainings now. So the question is, what are your life hacks for explaining the value of value stream mapping to top managers?
So Mike and I talked about this yesterday. You want to go, Mike, or do you want me?
Sure, I'll take a couple. I think life hacks for when you say life hacks for explaining the value of value stream mapping. I had a colleague years ago that said you got to sell the sizzle. It's not about value stream mapping. It's about selling the benefit. What makes it exciting? What stimulates people? And so I think it's very situational. And so understanding, I typically will start with what problems are you trying to solve? And then helping people understand how value stream mapping can help address those problems. It could be capacity issues, it could be customer service type issues, it could be, and even making it more personal, it can be, hey, if we do a good job of this and there's clarity on what's supposed to happen when, and we put in place standard work and such like that, if those are things that are needed, it might be creating capacity for folks. I'm going to put a different twist on it. It's a way to help. It's a cheap word, it's a consultant word, but it's a way to help empower your folks so we don't have to micromanage. So as leaders, so how do I create capacity for myself? How do I transition from that micromanagement and managing the process to managing and developing the people? So those are some of the things that I like to do. Karen?
Yeah, and ditto. I agree very much with all of that. And I think the other two things that I add to that is one is that, when you go in and start looking at a value stream and you look at the leaders over the different components of a value stream, you'll find most of the time that no one leader can describe with any degree of accuracy how value actually flows to a customer. And when you have a leadership team where they all have that limited knowledge of their own area and not a whole lot upstream and downstream from that area, it makes it very difficult to make the best decisions, spend the budget most wisely, prioritize and all of those things. So it's, getting all the leaders to truly see how work flows, or in most cases doesn't flow in the current state, to a customer. That's one thing. And then the second thing that's kind of related is that when leaders don't take the time to understand flow at a high level, which is what value stream mapping is, very macro level, then when their people start trying to improve processes at the process level, they'll get tangled up in the weeds and have a more difficult time making progress because leaders haven't fully defined the priorities. So if they're working on this problem over here, it may be a problem, but it may not be the problem that's top of mind for leaders. So it's a way to get a strategic alignment across the leadership team so that people are all focused on solving the same problems that matter to the organization. And it makes it easier to get progress then, and keeps the teams from getting frustrated because they start doing this great work and the leaders like, whoa, 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 what? Why are you doing that? That's not what's important. This is what's important. So it's another value.
So thank you. There are two follow-up questions about
1 second. I saw in this value stream mapping this clarity first. Karen Martin, the additional book, yes, and here we can find that how to make clarity problem, clarity in company, and remove unclarity.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you.
devoted fans of yours. So
The check's in the mail. I'm sending you money for promoting it.
well, one more question is also about the facilitation with the leadership. Are there any special tools that you can recommend how to make these sessions like the most effective?
We do have a bit of an outline in the book of, the steps that we go through with, walking through the 3 or 4 days if you're doing full days of a group being together. So we do have, a pretty methodical way we go about it. I think one of the things that's important is for the facilitator to feel very comfortable facilitating that level of leader that's in the team. And it doesn't matter what level the facilitator's at in the company. It matters that they're comfortable with working with senior leaders and understand how senior leaders think, assuming the team is senior leaders, which we recommend. And so it's the skill level of the facilitator really truly can make or break the event. And the maps, will be kind of mirror the skill of the facilitator. Doesn't mean that everyone didn't have a place to start. Beginning level, you have to learn and practice and get better and better. But for value stream mapping, it is important to feel comfortable challenging a vice president or asking a probing question to a chief level leader, a C-level leader. Because if you don't, then you're not doing your full job as a facilitator. And then they need to also respect the facilitator and understand what their role is, so that the facilitator can do their thing, and be successful. Mike, you want to add to that?
Can you repeat the question, Anton?
Is it a question to
Was
Karen
it about?
or
It was,
to Mark's question? Yeah, because yeah, the question was about a tool set, and I think it was a little bit from the different angle, because it seems we have to do a Java, we have to go and see, and so on, and we live in super distributed world now, when, like, you know, especially in technology, we can have a team who is literally spread it from East Coast to West Coast, but around the globe. And then it's about the process of visualization of this facilitation as well. So
yeah.
digital.
So, you know, I think we've all been forced into, or at least experienced getting forced into doing some of this stuff virtually. I'm still sold that if we can get together, it's a better experience. I've facilitated quite a few remote value stream mapping activities. I don't recommend, it'd be interesting to hear if anybody has successfully done this. I don't recommend hybrid, where half of the people are remote and half of the people are in person. I if we can't do it in person, you know, using these virtual whiteboards and having a couple people that are basically, they are assigned, or 75% of what they're doing is documenting what's going up on the board. Played around with a couple, different ways. Some groups, everybody's really good and excited and even sometimes more engaged when it's a virtual whiteboard than they are in person. And it's really, it's all over the map. And so sometimes I'll even have that conversation. And it's to be honest, it's probably been a year since I've done a virtual VSM activity. But sometimes I'll even ask the leaders, it's like, so what type of group is this? Are they the type that would get really engaged, or are they talkers and somebody else should be capturing it? So kind of getting a lay of the landscape, a lay of the land ahead of time, and strategizing on how to document that. And that's a specific answer tool set if we're going remote.
Thank you, Mike. And
Yeah.
we also have a quite reasonable question from Mark here, and there's also a good first start as well. So on the survey, we had about half of the folks who are new to VSM. Would it be appropriate to walk through the basics of VSM if you have something to share?
I could share a basic map. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, why don't put a basic map up there and we can talk to folks about what the concept or
Yeah, hang on one
purpose.
second. Let me get the.
Awesome bear for now.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. I'm just thinking we're talking high level, but for someone who's new to it, just showing the map and walking them through the process, I think would be helpful to get them kind of engaged and understanding what we're talking about.
All right, well, here's what I'm going to do then. I'm going to show first a complex map, and don't freak out. Then we're going to go look at a really simple map, okay? Because I think that's actually a really interesting way to look at it and then break it down. So I'm going to bring this over. Are you seeing a map?
Yes.
We're seeing a very complex map.
Okay, let me put this on the slideshow, current slide. There we go. So it's blurry by choice or by design. But basically a value stream map has, and Mike, you chime in too.
Yeah.
Basically a loop from some sort of request to delivering on that request. Often it's an external customer that's the focus of the top part. It can be an internal customer, like in the case of a HR, hiring and onboarding process, an internal manager may be the customer of that value stream. The same thing with technology, someone who's asking for development of software or, some kind of big major transition or something like that they could be the customer, but oftentimes it's an external customer. And so it's the customer requesting work be done and then delivering on that request. The map is a storyboard, so it needs to be unique and tailored to whatever the value stream is. It can have different symbols, different technology has different symbols, and different industries have symbols. Sometimes there's a truck actually delivering something, sometimes it's pushing a button on a computer, and so it's supposed to reflect the visual nature of something that you often can't see. There are three sections to a value stream map. There's the main process flow, or the workflow, is down here with these process blocks. Then there's information flow, which is at the top part of the map. How do people know what to do, when to do it, and how are they engaging with, you know, information and putting information into and drawing information out of systems. And then the third part of the map that's not shown here because it was a very big map is a timeline that shows the lead time, or the elapsed time of work flowing through the value stream versus the actual work time, the content work time to do the work. And then there's, you know, delays in between all of those. So that's the three sections of a map. The easier part of, or the easy map, let me get out of this. Let me actually get out, escape. They're in two different software systems, so I need to.
Can I inject,
Yeah.
Karen?
Yeah.
So this is one of the artifacts, and this is, if we talk about high level, what is value stream mapping? Typically, well, we think of it as a strategic perspective. It's high level macro view of a process. There's three deliverables. I typically say there's a current state map, what's happening today. And as Karen pointed out, it's a closed loop. It starts with that requester or initiator. In the maps, it's typically in the top center. Then what are the things that we have to do in order to satisfy that request and deliver that request? So it's closed loop, top center in this one, across the middle, and then it feeds back to that top center. So three deliverables: current state map, second deliverable is a future state map. What do we want this thing to look like in X amount of time? And that's part of the scoping process. We might say, I typically shoot, hey, 6-9 months. So this isn't a 5-year plan. This is, we want to create a bias for activity. So current state map, future state map, and then the third deliverable is a transformation plan. What do we have to do to transition? What has to be done in order to transition from the current state to the future state? Karen pointed it out earlier. I mentioned also it's a strategic activity. What Karen said is it's typically senior leaders, or the senior leaders of the process, that are involved, or the value stream, I should say, the senior leaders that are on the mapping team. It's not something that's delegated to a engineer or a project manager to go out and do it. So that's kind of, and what we're trying to do is drive common understanding of what's going on, get a shared vision of where we can be, and consensus on how we can achieve that.
Want to keep going on the simple one?
Go for it. You go.
Okay, so basically, you know, this is a simpler version of what you just saw. One thing that we mentioned is, you know, if there's different levels of granularity at looking at work. And so typically you scope the value stream so that you're looking at, you know, maybe 15 maximum processes where you have handoffs going across from left to right. I will say that every time we do one that's tech centric, we go beyond 15. And that's just because there's so many different parts that are moving and things like that. And but I don't think I've done one longer than 22, I think was the longest, maybe 23 process blocks left to right. That if you have more than that, then you're probably getting down into process level. And a lot of people are doing mapping at a process level and calling them value stream maps. And so there's not a clean line. Value stream map, process map, it is a continuum, but you want to make sure you're not getting into the weeds and doing process level mapping when you really intend to do value stream mapping. And then there's some key metrics, and I don't know that we need to go through those right now. I mean, I'm happy to answer if you would like us to, but this just depicts the three sections again.
Yeah, I see Andre. Hi, Andre. Good to see you, friend. Andre had a question. Can you elaborate on bias for activity or action? What I was trying to say there, what the idea is, hey, sometimes we put together plans that are 2-year, 3-year, 5-year plans, and they look great and they get lost in a shared drive somewhere or in a drawer. You got a 6-month plan, and we can create momentum. We can say, hey, this is the bias for activity, or the bias for action is, let's start on some of this stuff now, or next week, or the week after. And part of the transformation plan is actually, I'm going to say, time boxing or time slotting, and say, okay, idea number one, or experiment number one that we've got on the transformation plan, We're planning on starting that the first week of May, and we think it'll take about 6 weeks to get completed. So our target completion date is in June. So that's one of the things I think we create, I'll say, when we have a shorter time frame. And one of the things we're trying to do, you guys, is figure out how do we best utilize the resources that we already have in place. So instead of going out and getting, a new software package or hiring 15 people or opening up a new building somewhere, this is, hey, these are the things that we have in place. Let's do our best to optimize the process. And then if we need to automate or do something like that after, or throw some resources at it, then that's in our next round. So we go ahead, Karen.
I'm just going to add one more thing on to this bias for action. The other thing that happens a lot, if you say, okay, let's have this be a 1-year cycle that we're going to look at. All too often, people are like, oh, we got a year. And they
Right.
underestimate the amount of time it takes to do really good transformation work, where it's not just someone designing it and telling people what to do and slapping it out there and not having a really good deployment process and things like that. So that 6 to 9 months that Mike mentioned is key to get people going too. Like, you get the future state map and you have your transformation plan, the next day you should start, so it's time to chop, get going. And there's a very high risk of other things coming out and leaders going, oh, let's do that now, we'll stop this, let's do that. And you just want to try to prevent that as much as possible by speed.
We also have had several questions about that. I think one of them you covered. That is about actually like what leaders support change at first when all these maps are created, and then how can teams keep leadership engaged long term? Which next one will be like, how do you help teams prioritize changes when everything seems important? So that is like collapse of priorities.
Can I take a first crack at least part of that? So good value stream mapping, it's not the team keeping the leadership, I should say good value stream transformation. It's not the team keeping leadership engaged. It should be the leaders keeping the team engaged. And so one of the things that we talk about early on when we scope this, and again, it's about who we're engaging and who's the champion. There's a value stream champion, there's a value stream leader, typically. And so those are people with the authority and or influence who can drive the change. Do not give this to a project manager. That's not a knock on project managers, and it's not saying don't engage a project manager, but this is strategic stuff. This is how we're transforming, especially on these customer facing value streams or key internal support value streams. This is stuff that's important to do in order to achieve the company's goals and objectives. So I know we're supposed to delegate as leaders, but but we're also supposed to be driving and supporting the big problems that need to be solved.
And leaders over delegate all the time. It's a very common occurrence. And so you have to help them understand their rightful place in, yes, delegating. So we have a lot of clients that have a project manager that's actively engaged in the value stream transformation, but they're not just delegate. They shouldn't just delegate to that project manager. That project manager is basically working for them at that point in helping make sure that all the things that have to happen are done and done well and designed well and all those things. So that the leader needs to be really engaged. And if they're not, there's a high degree of risk that it's not going to be the full future state won't get realized, or it'll be a superficial application of the improvements, or it'll die quickly. One of those three. So, and I wanted to just also talk about the prioritization question. I have a slide up here that I might want to show here. So Mike and I use this all the time. It's a super simple tool, and it's just, very easy for people to give a directional swag or an estimate on what should be the priority and how do you work on it. So basically, think of the future state map is designed, and then it has line items on a plan that need to be executed in order to get the future state to become the current state. And those line items, am I sharing?
No.
Oh, I thought that was not the
Not
case.
yet, but you're talking awesome.
There, that helps, doesn't it, to see it?
Yes.
And so you have these line items on a plan that are the problems to be solved or the things that are going to be implemented to realize that future state. And so you number those, and then you ask the team, all right, well, how high is the benefit for that item in getting us toward the future state? And then how difficult would it be in order to implement that? It could be difficult from a technology perspective. It could be a political thing, like how difficult to get everyone to buy in, how difficult is it just logistically or whatever it might be. And you have people rank it, and then you draw these bands that have 4 different levels of priority. And generally speaking, you start working on the high priorities, high benefit, easy to implement first. There's one exception to that, and that is that you can have like 12 and 18 are extremely high benefit, but they're also really difficult. But you may need to do it. And so you may need to decide that, okay, we're going to start with these 2 and slay them, get those done first. And then, whoops, sorry. What happened there? There we go. And then go up to the easier ones. So you have to be, a little bit thoughtful about this and not have it be set in cement that you must do that first quadrant first. Mike, anything?
And the cool thing about it is this gives us permission not to do everything, and it triggers conversation about, okay, 12 and 18 are critical. We don't have an option here, or maybe number 6 is a prerequisite for doing something else. But it triggers that conversation. It's not a person making this decision in a vacuum, and we're trying to kind of objectify conceptual ideas.
And if you have a group that are a little more logic oriented, like engineers love this to be numbered from 1 to 10 on both
Right.
axes. 5 is the middle ground, and then they go, that's an 8, that's a 2. You can do that as well. You can put a scale on your axes. Any questions on that?
We just have.
I'm going to go back to, I feel like my leadership question was almost a cheap answer. But I think one of the things that's important is that we're having that conversation about leadership's role long before the value stream mapping activity.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't really talked about setting up for the value stream mapping activity, but it's invaluable to have a charter that says, this is what we're looking at. This is why we're looking at it. This is how we're going to try to achieve it. We talk about team members. We talk about stakeholders. They might not be on the team, but getting buy-in from those other leaders of affected groups, I'll say, getting buy-in from them ahead of time that, yeah, that you guys are looking at the right thing. You've got the right folks on the team. You've got the right objectives. And during those conversations, we talk about the leader's role. Okay, not just up front in the planning and in the planning, not just their role on the team, but also who's going to lead the transformation. And we have specific conversations during the activity itself saying, what's the frequency that you guys are going to get together? This is your plan, transformation plan. How often are you going to get together? And we provide some, I'll say, orientation on how to do that process check.
Yeah, and the frequency of them getting together is a really big deal. You have to get that nailed up front. Can't emphasize that enough. And sometimes, it's really frequent in the beginning just to get them used, if they're not used to working that way and managing a plan with that kind of precision, it may be you need to get that mapping team back together again every 2 weeks, and with the leader, to keep the momentum going. And then maybe you end up, you can maybe go to once a month or something like that. But it really depends on how sophisticated people are and how reliable they are with execution. Designing's fun. But when you need to execute, then you need people that know how to do that and stick to it.
Karen, I don't think we talked about that. I don't think I shared this with you yesterday when we were chatting, but it's interesting when you get to transformation and successful transformations, it can be really, really tough for a lot of organizations. And I've actually supported more than half a dozen construction companies looking at big, big projects that, putting in place solar fields, 500,000 panels. It's everything from acquiring the land, getting the permits, acquiring the material, engaging with contractors, and then in some cases, even running the facility for the next 20 years. And it's funny, those organizations have a fantastic success rate in achieving their transformation plan, because these are organizations of project managers.
Mhm.
And they are used to executing projects. And it's just such an interesting contrast.
Mhm.
Even in other organizations where it's engineering design firms, or I can't speak, I won't, and I'll even say in IT, they execute projects, but for some reason, it seems like construction as a generalization has much better track records in really executing projects.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah, it's good.
So,
Good project manager for you, and you might need to coach them as the leader. You've got a leader that has good project management skills. That's the value stream leader that can be very instrumental or helpful in success.
so cadency for leadership meetings about VSM doesn't work if it's once a decade, like Karen
Right.
told us. So it should be like at least once a month. Yeah.
And if you've got a 6-month transformation plan, having 5 process checked during those 6 months, which would be monthly, is not frequent enough.
And we still have need in project managers. So that is like. Okay, I also have a few questions around what you just told us. Um, One of them is related to what you, Mike, told about organization, and we had a question from Anna. Is about
I can
shrink.
ask this question.
Oh, please do.
Okay. So your book, at first, thank you for your book. It, 200 plus very good, useful information, and it's concentrated information. Thank you for it. So my question is, your book focuses on growth-oriented transformation. If a company is cutting budgets and planning to shift into product maintenance mode, large staff reduction, and how can value stream mapping help navigate this transition?
You want to answer, Mike, or you want me?
Go take the lead. I've got some thoughts for sure.
No, yeah, it's a tough situation, first of all. So one of the things that you can use value stream mapping for is developing a value stream from scratch that you've never had. Another one is looking at it in a whole new set of conditions that you've never experienced before, which could be staff reductions, it could be a market change, it could be product technology changes, it could be anything, and rethinking the value stream and how it needs to be designed and staffed to meet this new set of conditions that you're being given. So you can definitely use it as long as it's appropriate to look at a whole value stream. If you're having one area of people being let go, then it might be more process level work that you have to look at to figure out how do we get this work done now with fewer people on staff. But it is, it's not necessarily just redesigning an existing value stream. It could be kind of starting not from scratch, but it can be, taking a whole fresh look. Well, the future state is always looking at it from a fresh look perspective, but if you don't have an existing process to start from, then it's a different thought process than it is if you already have a process or a value stream in place.
I think, I mean, as ugly, as unpleasant as staff reductions are, I think value stream mapping can be a really, really effective way to facilitate the conversations. So we're transitioning away from a development company into a sales or a product company. Okay, that's cool. So what does that mean to the different functions across the organization? Value stream mapping I've found is a very adaptive tool. As I'm saying this out loud, one of the things I'm wondering is, well, if we stick to the traditional approach to a value stream, hey, we're picking a value stream, a series of processes. It might be it'd be a really interesting and fun way to look at it, because what you might do is say, okay, our current state, I'm not sure exactly how to define the process that you're going through, but I have to think about it. But you say, okay, our current model is we are a development company. So what is that process from conception of an idea through development, through marketing and distribution or sales? So that's part of our current state, and our future state is, hey, there's very little at the development side. There might be some support side and resources needed for the product to maintain it. But what does that look across the, it's interesting. I almost wonder if the silos there might be actually the different departments and saying, how are we resourced? But one of the really powerful things is we're getting everybody, it gives us a forum, and it gives us a forum for the leaders from the different silos or organization departments of the organization to get together and talk through this stuff, as opposed to saying, engineering, you got to cut 50% of your resources, or so and so, you got to cut, we're going to cut 10% of these guys, we're going to cut 70% of them, and sometimes when we do that, we miss some critical conversations. Oh, we're getting rid of development, but what will we need from a support perspective? So it's a I think it's a really effective tool that can be adapted to a whole bunch of different environments. An interesting value stream I did one time was it was our carbon footprint. And so that's not a typical process, but we were looking at different parts of the organization and what was their carbon footprint and where were the opportunities, where were the needs, consumption, potential waste, what could we do to address those things? I hope that kind of made sense.
And that's like an energy value stream map. And that actually, I hear about that a lot. I haven't engaged with anyone yet on doing an energy map, but it's like, what's our electricity consumption, our water consumption, what environmental impact is each process having? And I think it's a really good way. I mean, again, a value stream map is a visual storyboard, and it's a really great enabler, and Mike said it a couple times, of conversation. It's not about the map per se, it's about what the map enables. And so it's those conversations that are needed. I wanted to also mention one quick thing is that, we see a lot of product companies becoming technology companies. So they used to manufacture a product, and now there's so much software involved and so much integration with other systems that they're becoming a technology company. And the sales team often struggles mightily with that transition. In fact, some salespeople need to often be let go because they can't quite make that switch in selling technology versus selling a widget, a product. And so value stream mapping becomes really important to use to help start mapping out, okay, so now what do we do? Again, the conditions have changed. Now how do we flow work all the way through the customer when the customer is receiving both a product and technology? So that's another interesting way to use value stream mapping.
Awesome. We also have Anna. Do you have any follow-up questions about that?
Thank you. I just want to add that I had this experience with cut cost for 20% per year, and then go the product to the maintenance mode. And I used value stream. And it was very powerful to see how we can reduce, how we can improve opportunity to reduce LT, process time, lead time, how we can automation a lot of processes, not just I have 20% cut cost for budget, and I go to the people and said, oh, 20% of people you need, I will fire you. No, I have it with value stream, use it, and it was very nice. say it's a really powerful
Great.
instrument.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
Thank you.
I have two questions, maybe like a little bit from different angle, from Aliona and from Mark. So first one is, in your book you mentioned that during Gamma walk, the facilitator should ensure that managers, then it's like critical part, gain a deep understanding of the process. How will you verify they have truly understand it? And do you have any tips for checking this? And Mark's question is a little bit related to it. When I do VSMs, I typically start a meeting with where we current state map. Then I have the team go back and gather lead time and process time. Is that how you typically do it, or you do go, or do you go together the data prior the current state map activity? So you gathering data before that.
you want to take it, Mike, or you?
So I'll take Mark's question real fast. So Mark, typically what we do is we ask people to gather the high level performance data ahead of time. So if it's even before the current state map. I'm a big one, and Karen and I kind of differ on this, and maybe it's situational on the clients. I'm not I don't believe that the data has to be incredibly precise. So on process time and lead time, so process time is a work effort, lead time is a throughput time through each of the boxes, if you will, through each of the processes on the value stream map. I'll collect that information during the, typically we will collect that directional information while we are current state mapping. And typically what we're doing is current state, it's not exactly this serial, but current state map day 1, future state map day 2, transformation plan day 3, and it all gets jumbled up. But that's kind of my answer to that question. Before we go back to the other one, Karen, you want to
Yeah, I mean,
point out
it is.
how we do it different?
It's situational.
Yeah.
So first of all, I had the privilege of working with someone on our team that came from McKinsey, and they are very data oriented. And so part of my shift in how I approach data was influenced by working with this gentleman, Mark. And what we were working in Spain for a U.S. defense contractor, and it was a tech value stream. And part of what we have to do always is know what's the demand, how much work is coming into a value stream, so that you can figure out what you have to do so that work can flow. And all during the planning process, when we were putting the charter together and everything, it was this volume, and everyone was resolute. It was this volume. And at one point in planning, Mark said, "We need to get data." And I said, "Oh, okay." And so we asked for data, and the data came in and it matched the number pretty closely. And he said, "Something's wrong here." And it was something that they had said during the planning thing that wasn't marrying up with the numbers we were looking at. So we probed a little bit, went back and asked them again. Turns out they were missing one of the highest volume sources of work coming into the value stream that they just forgot and just weren't thinking about. It wasn't top of mind. And it so it was 12,000 requests a month, not 7,000. And they were staffed for 7,000. And so it was a significant, and that changed my world. From that point when I started going, okay, well, if the data exists and if it's clean, that's a whole another discussion, is if the data is good, why not get it if it's not, monumental to get it? So that changed me a little bit. And then the other thing was, we were working with a hospital, and part of the problem was patients weren't getting through the emergency department quickly enough. And there are many, 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 many complex reasons for that. But one of the reasons was they were having to sit because there were no doctors available to see the patients. And so we started looking at staffing, and they insisted that their peak volumes were at 1 p.m. and then onward. They insisted, everybody, resolute, this is what it is. This is reality. And I asked for data, and we got the data. Their peak started at 10 a.m. That was old history. 1 p.m. was like, 3 years earlier. And they were clinging on to history and not dealing with reality because they were unaware. Nobody had, done the numbers. And so I do think it's really important to get data when you can, when it's not going to be heroics and gymnastics to get it, and use it, but to Mike's point, well, actually adding on to Mike's point, lead timestamps in a computer system are pretty easy to get. And if you can get them, you should get them, because it accelerates and you don't have to debate lead times if you've got timestamps in a computer system, assuming the data is clean. Process time and quality are not usually in the computer system. And so those you have to get through talking with the people who are, more familiar with the work. And I do agree with Mike that directional is okay, because all you're doing really with value stream mapping is surfacing the problems and prioritizing what matters to work on first, second, third. You're not getting into all the weeds and all the waste behind the waste and all that stuff. So I just think that we should do what we can to get what's easy to get, and it's going to help us, and then rely on people's opinions, but they're educated opinions. They're doing the work and making sure that you set a safe environment so they will tell the truth about what their experience is and not try to make it look better than it is.
And I'm going to say in most cases, it's about lead time. It's not about process time. And people get wrapped around, they really get hung up on process time. And typically it's the response time that we're trying to improve. That's not true in all cases, but it's hard for a lot of people to transition away from the micromanagement of man hours, people hours, to the throughput time of the thing that we're trying to deliver to our customers internally.
Unless you're working on freeing capacity, which the last three of my value streams were.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, because of tight workforce conditions. So,
yeah.
So
yep. Anyway. I agree. It's situational.
Yeah.
I think we might have a time for an ending question, and you also mentioned a few times that you worked a lot over the technologies. However, it's spread it much wider. However, mostly our members of our reading club are IT folks. So that the question is that what if you would add some chapters or change in your book, because like it's a decade past, especially if we're talking about a IT domain. I'm just squished 3 questions all together to
yeah, but they're good. You want to start, Mike?
Sure, I'll keep it quick, just looking at the time. And but I think, and one of the questions was, if you were rewriting the book for IT professionals, which is different than rewriting the book, updating the book, because on purpose, we tried to make the book relatively agnostic, so generic, so you could apply this thinking across a whole bunch of different industries. That being said, software and IT has become instrumental in just about every industry. So I do think that there's an opportunity in there to at least touch upon things like agile and DevOps and such. I know all of that's evolving, and even AI, or automation. So I think they're worth a mention in the book that we put together, because, well, we mentioned a lot of other tools as considerations for the future state map. So, but those are things that, as a facilitator in most environments, we're not expected to, the facilitator should not be expected to be the expert on the process. One of the risks of the facilitator being the expert on the process is they've got a stake in the game, and they're going to be biased. And so how do we remain an unbiased person? Don't go in and say, this is what you need to do. But perhaps there should be times when we should be asking, have you considered this? Karen?
I wish we would have gone a little more into the plan execution from a risk factor, the risk of distraction, the risk of not completing the plan, the risk of, new priorities coming in and taking resources away from the value stream transformation. We both mapped so many more, and worked with so many more clients in different industries since we wrote the book, that there are patterns emerging that, I mean, we had done a lot before writing the book, because we started, I don't know what year you started mapping, but I started mapping in 2000, 2001, value stream mapping. So we had a lot before we wrote the book, but now, you know, with a new body of evidence, you know, there's just a pattern that's quite common where organizations don't complete what they intend to start. And I wish we would have gone a little heavier into that.
And there was a question earlier on that had 2 thumbs up, and it was about how did we write? And Karen wrote and I edited. Well, we brainstormed ahead of time, kind of put together an outline, and said, hey, what do we want to cover and things like that. Karen's an awesome writer, and she's fantastically productive, and anybody who's read her other books knows how true that is. But she was.
And you're a fantastic editor. Like, what are you talking about here? No, we need to say it this way. You know, so it's we've written 3 books together. So value stream mapping was our 3rd.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that was our writing process.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Like we are very time box folks, like lean, guidance, everything here. So I want to thank you all for being part of this insightful discussion, and of course, special thank to you, Karen, and you, Mike, for generously sharing your experience with us. And your book, Value Stream Mapping, is like has given countless like tools for visualize our work, like align leadership and drive lasting improvements. And we appreciate everyone's participation and engagement, and see you all next session. And now it's a time to stop the recording, of course, and if you will have time and inspiration to be in this short all the record session today. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.